Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone to another webinar here for Boostability. I am your host, Sunny Nielsen. I am the Communication Manager here at Boostability. And thank you for joining us. I am joined today by Kaz Bevan. She is our Director of Communication and Marketing here at Boostability. And today's webinar, we will be covering the state of social media address. We want you guys to understand how to maximize your ROI and how to look at the results of your 2016 data so that you can get a better idea of how to move forward into 2017. So a couple of quick little housekeeping things here. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, we love questions. We are happy to answer them for you. There is a questions box here in the webinar. Feel free to chat your question into there, and Kaz or I will answer them as quickly as possible. Now, if we cannot answer your question, again, we still want to hear it, and we will do our best to get answers for you. We will respond during the webinar, or we will email you afterwards. But any questions and answers that we receive in the webinar will also be available on our Facebook page so that everyone can follow up with those questions. There is also a chat feature here on the webinar, so feel free to chat hello or where you are from in that chat area. We are happy to have everyone here from around the country and around the world. And now that you know where some of those lovely housekeeping items are to help you get the best information and the best experience out of this webinar, I will hand over the reins to our director, Kaz, so that she can take it from here. Hello, Kaz.
Hi, thank you, Sunny. So, yes, today we're going to talk about the results of your campaigns. We're going to take a break from all the other crazy campaigns that the world has been talking about, and we're going to talk about how we analyze ours. So, it is the end of the year almost, but it's already time for you to start thinking about and putting into place your 2017 strategies. So today we're specifically going to talk about how you build that strategy from what you know about your social media audience, and this will help you to build not only your social media strategy going forward, but your content strategy as well as some of your PPC strategies. So a lot of that derives from this information that we're going to learn about. So first and foremost, we're going to analyze our audience. So we're going to know more about our audience and figure out, who's clicking on things, who's engaging, who's visiting, who's following, and what does that look like when compared to who we imagine that person to be. So a sample of just general demographics is right here. This is pulled from a third-party aggregator. So you can pull it from Facebook, and you can pull it from Twitter. You can pull it from your social media sites in general. But you can also, if you use like a Hootsuite or a Buffer, or in this case, this example is Sprout Social, you can have all that information pulled in together for you. So here's a good example of just seeing some generic demographics about 56% female, 44% male, and the age group. And right there at the top, it just gives you a one sentence explanation of what you can derive from these two images. So we have followers of mostly women between 25 and 34, and that's your leading fan group, so your leading followers. So you take that into account, and then you dig a little deeper. Now we've put into this slideshow some more details about how you're going to find each part of these analytics and where you're going to find them. I'm going to quickly just pass over them during the webinar, but these slides and a recording of the webinar will be available to you as soon as possible after the webinar, and you will be able to look at these with more detail and follow step by step to review your own analytics. So don't worry about that too much for now. If you do want to kind of follow and play along, then quickly just log in to your Facebook business page, because that's something that most of us, if not all of us, probably have. And when you log in as an admin, you'll see the Insights tab there at the top of the page, so circled in red here on this image. And as you go into Facebook Insights and click on the People section, that's where you specifically see Facebook engagement. So here's another example. You know, first we had the women in a certain age group. Now looking at this one, the men and women are a little bit slightly closer to 50-50, and the age group is kind of, you know, a little bit wider here on Facebook. It's for most companies, at least that we're speaking to in the United States, you're going to be happy to find out that your number one country is the US and that your number one city is a major city. So that's some important information. And of course, if you're posting in English, it's always nice to know the majority of your followers are also speaking English. So now we have two different sets of demographics that we've looked at. This is how to look at your Twitter demographics. And now we're going to take those two and compare it to Twitter. The one thing that I absolutely love about Twitter is the fact that without having to pay more, without having to purchase additional software, without even having to run an advertising campaign, Twitter tells you so much more about who follows you than any other social media site. So this is super great information because we take what we've learned about our other followers and we put it together with our Twitter followers. Now, you also have to consider what you know from your own research and development about the type of people that engage most on these different social networks, and your own demographics should basically reflect that as well. So it's very interesting here, and I want to say that the sample for all of these is the same company, it is the same information, so it does all relate. So here on Twitter, we're seeing way more males following us than females, like on the other examples, but we get to know more about them. We get to know that they're mostly self-employed business owners interested in technology, marketing, and entrepreneurship, startups, and that they mostly make a household income of $75,000 to $100,000. Now, at first, when you look at this, you're like, that's okay, that's great information. So, you know, now what kind of thing? And what you're going to do is you're just going to, this is one of those things where no computer can tell you. This is why businesses have consultants and whatnot, is to take all this information and really analyze it. And it's part of it is that you have to analyze it from the heart and not just mathematically, especially as a brand new business or a small business where you're growing and you have an idea of who that person is. So you compare that information that we've gone through so far and you think, okay, if I want to reach my female audience, it looks like Facebook is where I can do that. If I want to reach more of a male audience, Twitter is where I can do that. But Twitter also gives you information that you can utilize on Facebook when you're building your ad strategy for 2017. You always have more success for advertisements if you can take that really broad audience and bring it way, way, way down. So you can test a campaign that's strictly towards men with these interests and these occupations and these incomes and see if you can balance out that followership there between Twitter and Facebook. But of course, that's only if your ideal buyer matches that. So when you think about your ideal buyer, you think about, okay, these are the demographics that I've seen. What parts of these match what I think my buyer should be or what I already know about my buyer? So Google Plus no longer gives information about the people that come to your Google Plus page. So It's even more important to get that from your actual Google Analytics. So when you go to the demographics section of Google Analytics, you're specifically now looking at who is visiting your website, which is great because now that you've derived all the information from your social media accounts and come up with your assumptions there, now you're comparing your followers to your visitors. So this is telling you who's actually clicking through from social media to your website. So it's really working for Facebook, it looks like, because it looks like you have that female demographic in that age group that you also have on Facebook. So you might have way more followers on Twitter. You may have a really great click-through rate on Twitter as well, but it's your females in that age group from all social sources that are clicking through. And so then you take that to account and you ask yourself questions about whether or not that matches. Are you primarily trying to sell to females? Is the 25 to 34 age group important for your business? And Sunny is going to go over a little bit more about your ideal buyer and how to figure that out. So take it away, Sunny.
Thanks so much, Kaz. So when you are thinking about your audience, as you can see, the information that Kaz showed you in the previous slides, it is a lot of information, and a lot of people get very overwhelmed because, again, there's lists and lists of data and charts and graphs. But we want you to realize that you don't have to be intimidated by the data. That data is your friend. And if you take the time to review it, to take it in, and to properly analyze it, you will be able to get so much more results and more sales ultimately from the money that you're spending because you're able to interpret that data in the best way. Now, once you've gathered all of that data together, we really want you to think about your buyer. Who is your ideal buyer? And ask yourself, how old is my average follower versus your buyer? Because all of the data that you have is only one side of the equation. Your followers, you don't know if they're translating into customers, and you want that, of course. So you need to make sure that when you're looking at the data, be able to see how old is your average follower, are your followers men, are your followers women, are your followers in your country, another country, and again, when she mentioned Twitter, having all the extra data for free, that is a gold mine for you to be able to maximize your spending dollars because you will be able to see how much they earn, where are they, and it helps you identify and hone in your buyer persona. Now, if you have never built a buyer persona is a fictional representation of your ideal customer, and it is based on your market research and your real data from your existing customers. And this is where Kaz was saying earlier that you want to be able to compare the data that you have from the social platforms that you're using with the people that you see as your ideal buyer. And then when you look at those and you compare the two, do they match? If they do, fantastic. You can continue to hone that and make it better. However, if they don't match, that is when you need to start asking yourself, where are the differences, and do I need to try and tweak my strategy to change and make sure that you're getting that maximum dollar? So again, ask yourself, how does your current customer base measure against your ideal audience, against your customer persona? How does your social media audience measure up against your ideal customer and your ideal persona? And how does your website audience, those that translate from the social platforms into actual clicks on your website, measure up to those that you're actually seeing online? And you want to be able to find the balance between those that you have as followers and be able to try and mirror that to translate it over into clicks on your website and clicks on the sale button. So you really want to look at the buyer persona and really focus in on that. And if you have not done that in the past, that is definitely a big thing that we want to recommend for 2017. And Kaz is going to talk about the 2017 strategy and what you can do with this data. Take it away, Kaz.
Thank you. So we put a few of our own questions out there into the void of Twitter to just kind of get a balance of what people in general are thinking compared to what stats in general say from statistician websites. So we found that the number of people that have already developed a buyer persona is very minimal, but people are aware of what it is, so they plan to. They definitely want to. They plan to for 2017, or they never have before. And that tends to be quite normal. That either you've heard of it and you've never done it, or you have no idea what it is. But not very many people have taken it to the next step and actually gone through it and discussed it with their teams, discussed it with executives, and figured out who that ideal person is. All the way down to, buyer personas not only include demographics, but they include the behavior patterns and buyer patterns and their motivations and their goals. So when you're coming up with who that ideal person is, what to look for is, again, going back over the data that you already have. And this is not, at this point, not just with your social media accounts and your website visitors, but if you have in any way through surveys, through having logins on your website, in any way, if you had that data or additional data from your actual buyers, bring that into it as well. So this is where you start to compare what you actually know, what you've pulled from the data that you do have versus what you actually want. So as a sample, we actually have, a very broad age group, but ideally we want to bring that down to more of a niche audience. And we want those people to be in college, no children, unmarried. This is actually a sample that I used from several years ago when I worked with a client, an education-based client that really wanted to help kids in transition from high school to college and learn more about college funding and financial aid and things like that. So this is a perfect example of what it looks like for them. They had too broad of an audience, followers that didn't necessarily engage because it didn't mean much to them, and so we needed to bring that down into their ideal audience. And we needed to discover why those additional people were following, what their initial interest was, and if we should be including that in our ideal audience. And what we found is that in some cases it was simply just young parents wanting to get involved with children, and then older students. So it's not that we didn't want to include that 24 to 35 age at all. We definitely did want to include them, finding out more about why they were following. But the way that we spoke to each audience became different. We realized that we had two different types of people. So we set advertising strategies for those two different types and advertised only to those two different niches. And then we even came up with an alternative Facebook group for the older audience to really support each other, to ask each other questions. And you can come up with those ideas when you really dig deep into your demographics like that. So, especially with that Twitter information and with any information you have from the buyer success that you've had so far, and just what you know about what you want people to be, when you figure out that buyer persona, that ideal, and mix that in with the actual, you can start to get this, this niche of the type of person. And a buyer persona is actually, it's a lot of fun to make. I think a lot of people don't get into it because it can be quite intimidating, but you're literally coming up with a fake personality, and there are multiple buyer personas. There's not just one. So you come up with George and you come up with Sally, and you figure out who George and Sally are. You give them a name, you give them a look, you give them all these interests, and then it becomes fun rather than becoming work. And you'll learn more about them through the research that you do with these how-tos that we've given you. So you can learn that George is primarily browsing the internet from his mobile device. He's closer to that $100,000 range, postgraduate degree, and he enjoys golfing. And you can find out from these demographics that even if your company has nothing to do with golf whatsoever, you can find out that for some reason the majority of the people that do buy from you actually enjoy golf. And it becomes a way that you can speak to a specific audience. So you're not even speaking about golf. You're not posting about golf. But when you do a PPC strategy on Facebook, Twitter, all these places, they know so much about your audience that you can literally say, okay, I know that most of my buyers actually really enjoy golfing, so I'm going to test an advertisement with all of these things that I have found about my audience. I'm going to add golfing in there as an interest, even though it has nothing to do with my company. It has everything to do with my buyer. So that's something that really becomes interesting, and the more you get into it, the more you almost can't stop analyzing people. And that's why my next suggestion is to take that information and just test, and test again. So you take everything that you have found and can assume from the demographics that you have, and you spend, each quarter of the year testing different advertisements against each other. So you test an advertisement that includes golf as an interest. You test an advertisement that includes that, technology and startup entrepreneurship as an audience, and you give them the same runtime, the same advertisements, the same dollar amount, and you figure out what is driving more success for you, what's driving the clicks and what's driving the conversions. And after you run that one for a month, you allocate your dollars to the one with the more success, and then you test your next demographic, your next little extra piece of niche audience that can help you really hone in, and it helps you just increase that return on investment, because the more you can figure out who that buyer is, the less cost it's going to be to gain the attention of those buyers. So the next step is to analyze your content. So now that we know more about your audience, we're going to know, you look into what your audience likes and what's driving that traffic. And Sunny is going to talk more about content.
Thanks, Kaz. So when you look at your content, just like we have gone through and dug through data and information on what is working and what isn't with your specific buyers and followers, the next thing you want to do is do that same kind of research into the actual content that you're creating. So not only do you want to consider the content that you already have existing, but you want to make sure that you research the trends in social media and the things that are working well now, especially because the digital age changes so quickly. You don't want to be caught off guard as things start to shift. So make sure that you do proper research to see what kind of social media, what kind of content your industry or your niche is using and utilizing, so that you can make sure that you match your competition and try to, again, outpace them to try and get more sales. So we did run a Twitter poll again, just to try and see what we felt like were trends. And so we asked, what do you feel will be the most important trend in social media marketing for this next year? And most people said real-time content, and that is most of our followers, which we tend to agree with there. And again, story platforms with Instagram Live, Facebook Live, or Instagram Stories, Facebook Live, Periscope, all of these live video platforms, which goes right along with the 33% live video. Story platforms and live video go really hand in hand, because those people want real-time content and immediately accessible. And that's a general trend on social media across the board. So again, if you're not utilizing these trends now, 2017 is a great time to start seeing how you can implement these new platforms and these new trends into your content so that you can maximize your spending dollars again. And then when you're measuring engagement, we had another poll here. What do you think is the best way to analyze the success of social media content? Again, it was engagement, because content drives engagement. That really is the entire goal of social media, blogging, all of the content that you put out there. The whole purpose is to create engagement with followers and potential customers. So if you have a great quote that Kaz found is, if you have no content, you have nothing to say online. And the content is what resonates with your audience. And by saying something bold, making a statement, making a stand, it increases your engagement potential with your followers. Now, Kaz, I'm going to hand this over to you so you can look at the Facebook engagement and go from there.
Thank you. So again, we've included some how-tos as far as finding where you're going to get more information on your Facebook engagement, your Twitter engagement, and whatnot. And we're not going to go over these line by line, but they will be available to you. So if you have jumped onto your Facebook business page, just to click around as you follow along, at the Insights tab, now you'll click on Posts on the left-hand side. And you'll, on your main screen of your Facebook engagement or Facebook Insights, you'll see just a generic view of engagement that tells you, things like here for the last 28 days, you've had a 47% increase in engagement. So you'll always have that first little micro view. But as you get into it, you get to see what your most recent posts and your top posts all have as far as what's most engaging. With Twitter, your sample, you can take up to a 90-day sample with Twitter, and you can order it by impressions or engagement, or you can just click right here on the tab that says top tweets. And it's just a mixture that they determine for you based on impressions, engagement, and engagement rates. So as you look at each of these, you'll notice, certain months that are more engaging, certain months that are less engaging. You'll take into account, hashtags. It looks like in all these instances, the SEO and small business hashtag is what's really working out. And then another way to view engagements, and especially if engagements are really important to you as a business, is to use third-party aggregator, those Hootsuite, Buffers, and Sprout Socials, because there's other social media accounts you could be using, like in this example here is Instagram, where currently they don't report analytics, or if they do, they don't report it very well, but they do open it up to some of these third-party sites to assume a lot of analytics from your content. And so if you want to see, especially if you're working into a more real-time strategy, if you want to see how some of these storytelling, photos, real-time type things are working, I would highly recommend investing in some of these reporting softwares that really bring together the full picture, no pun intended, of what your engagements are. So here you can see really quickly that, coffee was getting 425 engagements, whereas the video was getting 153 engagements. And it gives you a little bit more of an insight into, what your Instagram audience is interested in. And that way you can do one of the things that I absolutely always recommend most. One of the main mistakes that people make is they're starting a business or growing a business, whether you're a business of 5 or 500, there's always a growth period where people are wearing too many hats and they're not paying attention to what is important. And the worst thing, the most annoying thing to me that happens is they post the exact same thing across all of their social media accounts with no difference. And you'll learn as you're going through this and seeing more about this that you have very different people that are maybe all your perfect buyer, but in different ways, that engage in different ways. And so of course you're going to post something different on Instagram than you would on Facebook. They're completely different platforms. So it's really going to teach you how to take advantage of your varying audiences and speaking to them in different ways. So while you're going to post something similar across all accounts, you're going to post it in just a slightly different enough way that what you've done for yourself is you've increased your audience, you've increased your brand awareness and your online visibility, because while your most dedicated followers are going to follow you across all of these accounts, they're going to be turned off by seeing the same thing over and over again. They're kind of going to ignore it. So it doesn't really count as a true impression. But even if you're talking about the same thing, if you just change the way that you talk about it, change the photo that you're sharing about it, then you're going to get them to engage each time. You're going to get them to stop and look, and you're going to end up with a higher click-through rate that way, because maybe they weren't interested in how you worded it on Facebook, but maybe they love the way it looks on Instagram and they finally click through. So again, this is just an aggregation. This is one convenient part about those third-party reporting softwares, is that you can take every single one of your social media accounts and pull a group report, and you can get an understanding of how far of a reach you had throughout the year based on all accounts. And then you can break it down by Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and things like that. So you can see here, you know, that this has Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn all involved. It tells you how many engagements you have. It tells you how much increase from last year. And it just kind of does all of that assuming for you. But for smaller businesses, reporting like this can seem quite expensive. So if you can't do it, it's not that big of a deal. All the information is available to you on these individual accounts, and it's just up to you taking the time to derive it. So Sunny's going to talk about, again, what to look for and trends with content.
Thanks, Kaz. So again, when you're looking at the data, if you do not have a third-party system that will gather all of the data and all of those things from each individual platform, then really the best way to go about it is to start on one platform, and then the easiest way when you're talking about content and you're talking about making the engagement level for each content and on each platform, sort your posts by the highest engagement rate. So as you saw in the Twitter example, we could see the ones that were our top tweets. We could see the number of impressions, the number of engagements, the click-through rate. So you want to be able to sort those by the highest engagement, because you know that that got the highest amount of traffic. And then you can start to compare and contrast the things that are all in common with those. Again, Kaz pointed out that like our top tweets for that time period that we had pulled from all had the same hashtag. They all had small business hashtag. They all had SEO hashtags. So we know that those hashtags are key, and that topic of small business is really important, and that's one of our big drivers for engagement. And so as we continue to build our strategy for 2017, we will make sure to utilize those topics, those hashtags on that particular platform moving forward. Now ask yourself, when you're looking at these posts across every platform, does it contain a photo? Does it have a link? Is the link to a blog post? Is it, you know, what kind of tone of voice is it? Funny? Is it short and a short quip? Is it a longer post? These are the things that you want to be able to identify and see the trends that happen, because if you have most of the ones that are engaging on your Twitter feed have images versus non-images, or if they were all funny posts versus non-funny posts. Seeing those kinds of trends, just like with the buyer persona, you're doing the exact same thing just for your content, so that you can start to identify those gold nuggets of style and tone, length, and content style of, you know, video, photo, anything like that. Being able to identify those individual things will help you maximize the content that you're putting out there for the maximum result. So as you're going through and discovering these things about your actual post, you can also look and see, is there a particular day of the week or a particular time of day that also contributes to why these have the most engagement. And again, as you're building out this list, don't be intimidated by all the data, but be willing to put in the time and put in the energy so that you can identify these key elements and be able to implement them in your 2017 strategy. So Kaz, please talk to us a little bit more about analyzing your clicks moving forward.
Absolutely. So I don't want to say that clicks are the least important, but this is all in a certain order because you need to really analyze your audience first, and then how your audience compares to your content, and then your clicks. And the reason we analyze clicks last is not based on importance, but it has a lot to do with the data that's available to you, the accuracy of that data, and the fact that it's more about how you're going to drive more clicks rather than what clicks you have already received, because you'll already see that when you analyze your content. You'll be able to see that just by engagement. So just as that poll result said, engagement is by far the most important thing to look at with your social media metrics. It's not the number of followers you have, it's not the number of clicks you have. It all comes down to engagement, because engagement is involving all of that data and compiling it together. If you have 1 million followers and you only have 20 people engaging, that's really terrible. That's like, it doesn't matter if you're not reaching your followers. So we're doing our best here to figure out year after year how to reach more of our followers, how to engage with those followers, and then how to sell to those followers. So Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn give minimal information on clicks. They'll just give you a very brief insight that usually only is a 30-day window, and when it comes to pulling a mass report on clicks, that's just something that throughout this year especially, we've seen a trend in them not even reporting on it anymore. Like Google Plus used to report on clicks, and they don't report on it at all anymore. They don't even give you a view. Instead, they give you they replace it with how many searches from Google led to your page or involved your page. So that, again, is another form of engagement. It's another form of follow-through. And so even the way that these different sites presenting data are trying to explain to people what is most important. So when you're trying to figure out what clicks mean for you, the best place to go is to your website. So you're going to look at your Google Analytics. If you haven't set up Google Analytics before, there's a how-to on our website at boostability.com under Boost U, which is our Boost University. So you can go through those steps for free. If you do have Google Analytics, we're going to be looking at the Acquisition tab and specifically the social media network referrals. And what that is going to look like is like this. So here's a sample shot of what that looks like for the top 5 social media networks that have been driving traffic to this website. So immediately, most people are going to assume, okay, great, Facebook is where I should put all of my money and all of my time, and I should really focus on Facebook. And while that might be true and right, we're going to talk about how to analyze the bigger picture here. So on this report, there are various sections of the report. So social network, obviously that's which network it's coming from. Sessions is how many clicks to your website. And then it'll give you number of page views, which is how many views that those clicks resulted in, and average session time on your site, and pages per session. So what you're going to look for is not just the clicks, because a lot of people click, and then a lot of people click away. So you're going to look for 2 different things here. You're going to, from a social media content and demographics standpoint that we're talking about today, you're going to look at what's driving the traffic. You're going to just pay close attention to page views and time on site, because that's your ideal person. Your ideal person is not just somebody that's clicking and then clicking away. It's the people that are clicking and they continue to click. They continue to look at more pages, and they're spending that time on your website, because those are the people with true interest. So again, this shows, to most people that Facebook is the most popular, but when you see the big picture point of view, something like this may actually show you that something like an extension on your blog or LinkedIn are driving actual time and page views to your website, whereas Facebook is driving a lot of clicks, but not a lot of people are sticking. So you can take that one step further, and when you're building your website strategy and you're looking into that, then that's a whole different discussion. We'll get into that a little bit more with our next webinar, actually. But that's where you analyze why people are clicking away. So we're not going to talk about that today because we're only concerned with what is making them stay. So you compare the results that you find on your Google Analytics to the results that you have found from your social media posts and the ones that had the highest engagement, and you're going to derive, you're going to assume a pattern there. You're going to assume that, okay, going back to that, the highest engagement on Twitter, social media, and SEO hashtags, we're driving the most engagement. So let's assume, looking at our Twitter page views, that the majority of the people that are actually staying on the site are looking for social media and SEO for a small business standpoint. And then you can actually go in with Google Analytics and see a clicking pattern. You can look at it even more and see which pages are entry pages, which are the best pages for entry points and where people tend to click to after that. So when you're analyzing how your engagement translates over to your website, you're going to ask yourself some more questions. This is where you're really, at this point you have all your information and you're thinking about your 2017 strategy. And so you ask yourself, how can I change posts in the future to encourage time on my website? And what can I do that's going to really get people not just to click, but to have curiosity, to have urgency, to want to know more? And that really shows through that real-time content becoming a trend and becoming a storyteller. We'll get into that in even more detail at the start of the year when we have our next webinar, but that storytelling is really going to become a part of what compels people, a part of what makes you authentic in your industry and not just something else to click on. Then you're going to ask yourself, how can I change the pages I am promoting in these posts to encourage more clicks and therefore more conversions? So how are we going to build curiosity and have it work for us still to drive clicks and higher page views? So while you may be able to drive more clicks with curiosity, we're still trying for that time on the site. The next question is, what is different about the posts that drive traffic from these sites as compared to other sites? So you're really looking into your content again here. You're looking into what's driving traffic from each individual social media network and why that works. And then you always want to consider if you advertise for that content, because you never want to make the mistake of thinking, oh, Twitter's been super successful for me. These are really high engaging posts. You want to always think to yourself, okay, wait, did I pay to have these posts be more engaging? And because you want to kind of compare your paid success differently from your organic success. You don't want to mix the two, because of course what you pay for is going to get a lot more exposure, but you're looking for what naturally works for you and what is most successful overall. So you utilize the information to allocate your 2017 social media budget, increase your budget on social sites that results in more web page activity. And these sites are the sites driving brand awareness, boosting your search value, and increasing your conversion rates. So we've pulled together just the different things that we've talked about so far as we've built that 2017 marketing checklist throughout this webinar. So you've seen most of these before about developing a persona, filling the gaps of what you currently know with what you can learn about your audience through demographics. A/B testing, some of that additional information you can pull from those demographics. And then consider creating a live video strategy, because video has been a rising trend for years now, but the live video is just, it's the right time to get into it. I can tell you at Boostability for our live video campaigns and even our recorded video campaigns that we put specifically on Facebook and other places besides YouTube, it costs a fraction of 1 penny in order to get engagement from. So we can get exposure to millions of people through one video, whereas there's still a very high competitive space for all other types of content. So I really encourage getting into video and doing video well. You don't want to have a fuzzy dark video that, you know, you obviously filmed of yourself from your bathroom. You know, you don't want to be those people that end up famous on YouTube for all the wrong reasons just because people think that it's hilarious. You really want to think about your brand and do video well, and you want to make time for real-time content. As you're super busy as small business owners and startups and entrepreneurs, the hardest thing to do is to take time for your own research and development and take time for real-time content. So you'll see down here that I put the 20-80 rule. And that is that you want to really lead into curating posts. And that also includes planning posts, posts that are pre-scheduled, anything beyond a 7 to 10 day gap. So any posts that you've scheduled or curated should account for only 20% of what you're putting out there. That is your goal, is to bring that down to be 20% of your posts going out on each network are actually planned. And then 80%, this really counts especially for the larger ones like Facebook or things like Twitter where you're posting 10 times a day versus once or twice a day. It can be a little bit more tricky, but 80% should be real-time content. So even, what I mean by that is that even if it's an older post, even if it's a blog post from a couple weeks ago, how you can turn that into something that's real-time is that you can think about, what can I say today to post that to my Facebook page today? What can I put in the content, not in the blog post, but in your actual Facebook post content that's going to be more engaging to audience today? You're going to take advantage of things that are happening in the world. You're going to take advantage of, that holidays and different things. You're going to just pull it into something that's more engaging and more real-time. And then, of course, there's other types of real-time content like the Snapchat and Instagram stories and just more and more things like that, like Periscope, YouTube Live, Facebook Live, those things that don't allow you to schedule. You have to be live. And the reason that these different social networks are trending is because that's what people want to see. People don't believe in your authenticity anymore if it's planned, if it's pieced together, if it's too much of a strategy that you came up with months ago. People tend to trust more if you communicate with them at a real level, at a live, here from the office, this is what it's like behind the scenes kind of level. So take advantage of that. Figure out what your story is. As a personal brand, as a business, figure out what it is you're telling, who it is you want to be and be portrayed as, and start testing some of those real-time tools such as Snapchat. And then another little tip that I have for your 2017 checklist is that just up over the last year, app usage has gone up 58%. So while no one on our little quiz back on Twitter, no one said that apps were going to be the next big thing. Well, that's obvious because we've had apps for a long time, but they all said real-time content is the next best thing. And the irony there is that the real-time content that we're receiving is all coming from apps. So app usage is up by 58%, so you really want to be very, very aware of your mobile strategy and make sure that everything that you do can be viewed well and engaged with from the smallest, oldest phone still in network today. So you want to make sure that everything you do looks great for all of your followers from an app and not just from a desktop computer. And specifically, personalization, personalization apps, personalization programs, and personalization in your sales teams. Personalization apps particularly grew by 344% last year. So personalization is all kinds of things. It's engaging with that real-time content again. So personalization on Snapchat is something like putting an event sticker on your photo. Personalization on the sales side is, really engaging with people one-to-one, including a chat program on your website, emailing people, being present as often as you can, engaging back on social media, writing back to questions on email, and really being there for your prospects and your clients. So personalization, while the apps are up by 344%, the stats just came out that in Q4 of last year, so during this end of year season, in Q4 alone last year, just testing personalization on average grew sales for teams by 5.5 or 5.5 times. And so your sales will dramatically increase. Your ability to convert will increase. You'll start to see that the trend is more towards a long-term sales strategy rather than those quick sales, and there will be more hand-holding in that process. And that's why you really have to be there. That's why that real-time content and that engagement from you is going to be so important. So definitely include personalization in your 2017 strategy. And then we'll talk more about that 2080 rule and more about long-form posts in our strategy webinar coming up in January. So one thing that I'm sure some of you have questions on is, okay, great, if I look at all of this, if I look at all of my data, what do I do if all of my posts that I've ever tried are the same? Like, I've never tried other hashtags, I've never tried other types of posts. And that's where you're really going to make the goal of trying that in this new year. And one thing that's become more and more apparent, and this goes along with the storytelling, is that people don't want to click away for information anymore because they just don't trust clicks anymore. It's all too often they click and it's not what they expect it to be. So when it comes to Facebook, when it comes to LinkedIn, people want to know the entire story. So long form posts means that you're posting on average anywhere from 150 to 400 words on your posts. So you're giving away the cow rather than selling the milk, kind of thing. And it may not seem like it makes sense, but it absolutely will drive more search, more organic search, more traffic, and higher conversions in the long run. Because the way that social media is trending is it's trending more towards an information capital and a customer service source. So you're going to, if you treat it like that in 2017, you're going to see your bottom line have an absolute difference, even if you can't attribute it directly to a click from social media. We're seeing more and more that these long-form posts without links, without any, please visit my site, please buy now, is what's driving those conversions because it's driving curiosity, going back to what we talked about with curiosity. So start planning your 2017 strategy. Go ahead and use this webinar. You'll get the recording as well as the slides. There's several other how-tos on our Boost You at our website. And we will be not having any more webinars for the rest of the year. But our next webinar will be with social media team, content team, and SEO team. We're going to talk about strategy and we're going to talk about trends in January. So I encourage you to check your email and follow up and sign up for that webinar as soon as it's available. If you didn't have a chance to attend our holiday marketing webinar, the recording for that is available on our Boost You as well. It's free. You don't have to sign up for it again or anything like that. You can go view the recording and view those slides. And then if you want details on our holiday marketing checklists, you can sign up there on the webinar page to have those detailed how-tos sent to you. So last but not least, do we have any questions from the audience? Do we have anything that anybody wants to go over, anything that you want to say?
Well, we only had one question that I was able to answer before because they just wanted to make sure they asked if we would be helping them improve their followers and marketing for Instagram, Facebook, etc. And I did tell them, as we've covered in this webinar, you can see, we wanted them to get a better understanding of how to analyze the data that they currently have available to them, because once they have a better handle on the data and how to read the data and analyze the data, they can then implement PPC campaigns and just better spend their marketing dollars to increase those followers and increase those clicks and sales. But aside from that, we are pretty good. So any last comments from you, Kaz, before we wind up?
Just that if anybody needs help analyzing their data, if they want to pull all this data, do an audit, and derive a 2017 strategy, that's definitely something that Sunny and I can help you with. And if you've never run a PPC campaign before, we've recorded a webinar on how to run your first Facebook campaign, which is available for free on Boost You. But if you need any help, if you have any questions, these are our Twitter handles, and please reach out to us personally. We love to help out with anything, and we definitely have some auditing tools that we can utilize to help you guys with anything that you want to derive from your accounts and just kind of analyze what you have so far. So definitely reach out. We're friendly people, and we are always online. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, so I've got the third shift hour, so to speak, in the United States, and Sunny is based there in the United States. So between the two of us, you have 24/7 access. So thank you for attending. Thank you for your chats and your questions and for just staying online with us. And we hope that this gives you a lot of excitement for next year and your strategy and the potential that you have for your business. So again, reach out to us with any questions, and we will talk to you again in January.
Thank you so much, Kaz. And thank you everyone for attending with us. We'll see you on our next webinar.